What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now, Back to the Past. I am Alex, and in this video, I want to talk about Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets in 2023. Was it actually that good? Looking back at the past, kind of going over the history of this game, because this one is wild. And obviously, this is in celebration, really, of tomorrow being Hogwarts Legacy Day for the Deluxe Edition, right? But this entire week, this upcoming Friday being when anybody can play this game if they get the standard edition of the game. So Hogwarts Legacy, kind of being, promoted as this game of our dreams and a game that hopefully fans have been wanting, and hopefully they get what they want after so long of a lot of games that just haven't done it. Now, one of the main things people often look at with Harry Potter games is how they get worse as they go. It actually started really well, and we're going to talk about one of the fans, I would say, favorites. Quidditch World Cup is definitely up there. I would say there's maybe a two-person race there to the top, whether it's Quidditch World Cup or Chamber of Secrets. I've seen some people throw around Prisoner of Azkaban. That is oftentimes looked at as the best structurally put together game of the three, Philosopher's Stone, Chamber of Secrets, and then Prisoner of Azkaban. But Chamber of Secrets holds a very special place in a lot of people's hearts. And so this game came out back in November of 2002. Very old game. And I do remember, and actually in doing research for this video, looking back, we're going to talk about all the different editions because this game is nuts. This game has too many editions, and they're all actually pretty different from one another. So looking back, I was thinking, I know I've played Harry Potter games in the past. I know it. I don't remember which ones. I can't remember which ones. I know in 3rd or 4th grade, which probably puts it after 2002. It's probably like 2004, 2005 is what I'm thinking of. And that I remember playing some Harry Potter game at my friend's house. Chamber of Secrets sure does look familiar. And then when we look at the Game Boy Advanced version of this game, which we will later on, I do feel like I remember that. Maybe not this specific game, but I would wager a bet that I owned some Harry Potter game on the Game Boy Advance back in the day. Because that isometric format that you play that game on, I totally remember that. Yet again, a lot of games were like that on Game Boy Advance, so I'm not 1,000% sure. But let's kind of break down the different things that we had going on here, okay? Now, we had 7 different releases. Everybody says 5. I think that's what you'll see if you go on like the wiki and all this stuff. There's 5 because the PS2, Xbox, and then GameCube, those all kind of get lumped in to the same one. But all 3 of them are actually somewhat different. The GameCube and Xbox are probably the 2 that are the closest. In fact, from the research I've done, there doesn't seem to be any like major changes between those 2. Those 2 are almost identical, if not identical. PS2 is close. It's just a little different in the sense of free roaming. So Xbox and GameCube is pretty limited. They'd kind of like pull you back, respawn you where you're supposed to go for broom riding, and also just general, you're out in the world and you're exploring. PS2 was a lot more open. PS2 you could do, whatever you wanted, go wherever you wanted. That was really the major difference between those. Besides that, the games are relatively the same, and they're probably the best version from a certain viewpoint, from a certain angle. Now, I say that because eventually we'll talk about the handhelds, because they're just a very different kind of game. So I think for the more exploratory, right, you're kind of just trying to find all of the hidden rooms, just anything hidden, I suppose, in general, from these games, those are probably the best ones to do. Even if you think about it from like a modern perspective, I think those are the games you would more gravitate towards. Whereas the handhelds, I think it's for a specific kind of genre. Game Boy Color being literally just a turn-based fighter like Final Fantasy and whatnot, that works for me. And I do remember seeing those kind of things back in the day as well, but it's not going to work for everybody, right? Now, for the purposes of this video, I went back and I played the PC version. So that's another version of this game, and the PC version is kind of in between the PS1 and PS2, Xbox, and GameCube in terms of visuals, in terms of what it's trying to do, how it actually, does the game. It's more in line with the PS1 than the next-gen consoles, let's say, at the time. Now, when I'm playing it, I was playing it to get ready for this video, I didn't hate it. I didn't love it. I'll say that. I do think there's honestly a lot of positives to this game. I think there's some sort of cool appeal that Hogwarts Castle has. There's some things fans will get into where with reused assets, and there are some pretty bad examples of, reused assets is a pretty common thing, but it can also get kind of egregious. And in this case, Chamber of Secrets really uses so much of the past game of Philosopher's Stone or Sorcerer's Stone. It's maybe 50, 60, 70% the exact same game, and then you're just kind of adding things. And that is, I believe, a problem. Now, I have seen people talk about how, well, at the same time, it feels like you're going back to school. I've read multiple comments of people talking about, well, when I was going back, when I was a young kid playing these games, you're literally returning. You're just going back to the same place, and it felt like you were actually doing it. And I feel like that's a pretty cool thing. I think it's giving them an out. I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with that. In fact, we'll probably have that discussion bringing back Hogwarts Legacy, right? The fans' dream. That may very well be a discussion with Hogwarts. Go back. Why not? Well, you'd be reusing so much, but you're returning for the next year. Doesn't it make sense? Right? So I think we're going to have kind of a similar talk just 22, 23, 24 years later, but it's going to be relatively the same. But, the PC version, fine. The voice acting, definitely not so good. The visuals, I kind of just learned to accept. Looking back and looking at what the PS2 is capable of doing with this game, it does look quite impressive from the higher spec consoles at the time. PC, not so much, which is odd how things have gone, right, where PC's kind of overtaken it. One thing I do see get brought up, and I noticed this in the moment as well, the music. The music across these games are phenomenal. They're really, really good, and I noticed that when I was playing the PC version. You're following a student, you're looking around to get to the next, challenge room and all this stuff, and you just kind of stop and listen a little bit, and it's like there's some beautiful, beautiful music that's playing in the background. And although the pictures aren't moving, right? Again, this isn't Hogwarts Legacy. At the same time, Hogwarts is pretty filled, and there's quite a lot of rooms to get lost in. I saw people talking about the differences between them, and I think PC was kind of looked at as these are the most hidden rooms. There are maybe not necessarily collectibles, but it's the best place to kind of just explore and just find different stuff. And I noticed that. Again, the game kind of drags you along. It expects you to follow a character to get to the next cutscene, to then tell you, hey, we need to go down to the dungeon. Then you'll run into a character. That character will kind of take you there if you follow them. That's how this game is. But if you go off the beaten path just a little bit, you will find room after room or hallway after hallway, and Hogwarts Castle is bigger than it originally seems. A lot of the scope of the game, if you're just kind of keeping to the narrative, is pretty contained. But it also can get a lot bigger, and I appreciate that. The spells, honestly, I don't mind it. One little joke jab I will throw in. Harry's very limited in the spells, which is very normal, I would say, for Harry Potter. I would always, growing up when I watched these movies, always make fun of Stupefy. I think it's a great spell. I think it's very handy. It comes in hand quite often. At the same time, Harry really doesn't have the diversity, to his spell catalog that maybe some other students may have. But, I honestly felt that, because he's using the same kind of spells over and over. But I would say the combat's kind of fun. You would think flipping over turtles and moving them into their little, cave or what, I don't know, this little pit that lowers a lever and all this stuff. I mean, it does get a little repetitive, but it's kind of fun. To be honest with you, it's kind of fun. And it's kind of fun to just walk around and explore and do these challenges, collect these stars, collect the beans. There's so many beans in this game, right? And just go from there. I enjoyed it. I think we can do better. I think that there's actually, again, doing the research, I think there are probably better versions of the game. And I think even looking at Prisoner of Azkaban, I kind of went ahead of myself. It was like, well, is this game better? It definitely seems like this was a big jump from Philosopher's Stone, but not that big. There was a lot of, again, reused assets. When it comes from this to Prisoner of Azkaban, it was more of fine fixes with Chamber of Secrets. Let's see exactly what works, and let's really zero in or laser in on those things. And that seems to be what Prisoner of Azkaban did. I don't remember playing it. I don't know if I ever played it. Maybe I'll do it for this channel at some point. But from what I saw, kind of an early research, I really liked what I saw. So you had PC. PS1, the thing with PS1 was a lot of chase scenes, right? There was a ton of chase scenes to it. And then in terms of the visuals, if you're looking at just those consoles slash PC, the PS1 was obviously on the lowest end of it. And you can tell. You know what I mean? You can tell. And I don't think it's awful. It definitely seems like it has a lot of reused assets. It definitely seems like it doesn't look the best of the group. And the chase scenes, from what I've heard, tend to be just reused assets from the first game, just kind of repurposed for this one. So PS1, I would maybe make the leap to say it's probably the weakest one. PC more, again, exploring and kind of a middle ground in terms of even visuals, if you care for visuals. So PS1 kind of is on the low end. And then you had the handhelds, again, both the Game Boy Advanced and the Game Boy Color, both of which extremely, extremely different. Now, again, Game Boy Advance, seeing it live before my eyes in other YouTube videos, I really feel like I could have played this game. And at the very least, I feel like I definitely played a Harry Potter game on the Game Boy Advance. I like the style. I remember that there's some nostalgia there kind of style. I like it. I like it a lot. I don't know how it's perceived in the greater Harry Potter fan, game movement, but I definitely enjoy that kind of stuff. And from what people have said, like it's pretty well, number one, it's pretty darn good. And number two, it sticks pretty close to source material. I would argue the PC version, from at least what I've seen and then played, the PC version is wild. It's absolute. It starts with Dobby lecturing Harry, and Harry's got these goggle glasses. They're hilarious. Like, I literally was laughing. I was like, what in God's name did they put on Harry's head? And it skips major chunks of this. Even like the Weeping Willow, you do like one thing, which is probably the least amount of stuff that you do in any of these games on PC, and then you jump, and then you go, and there's a lot of missed opportunities, I would say, that I felt personally when playing it. They missed so much in the PC version. It seems like that's not too much of an issue, at least for the other ones. There's also added minigames / kind of more advanced minigames in, specifically, I would say, the PS2, Xbox, that grouping of them, where the PC version just doesn't have it. So, again, you kind of miss out on it. But the Game Boy ones, they seem to be pretty solid. The Game Boy Color, my God, again, very different. I mean, if you're looking at them as the ones that are the most different, I guess both of them are. I would still say, because it has turn-based, and considering it had the weakest system or device at the time, I think it actually looks really, really good. Now, again, you kind of have to get over, if it's a hang-up, you have to get over the turn-based stuff, right? It's an old-style kind of game, and it is, again, from that perspective, probably the most different. I would say the Game Boy Advance would then be more similar, even though it's really not, but it'd be more similar to the PC and PlayStation, Xbox, and GameCube versions versus the Game Boy Color. But it was a wild era. And again, honestly, this was a wild game. I remember this game. I know this game is, to a lot of people, you'll see Let's Plays of this game quite often. You'll see a lot of people make videos, well, hence this video, right? You'll see a lot of people talk about this game quite often, and that's what drew me into it. But then when you kind of go down the rabbit hole, you're like, holy God. Again, it wasn't super uncommon to have all these different versions, and they were made from different people. They seemingly like took different kind of paths of how they were going to do things. We just don't get that anymore. But I don't know, 7, again, people lump it in as 5, but the GameCube and Xbox, maybe those are the same. So I would say maybe 6. There's kind of 6 versions of this game. That's I mean, can you think? Is there other examples of games that have more than 6 versions of themselves that are actually different? Like, they are literally different from each other. It's wild. It's wild how different it goes from one versus the other. And I would say, again, just going through the PC version, it's fine. It's a fine game. I wouldn't say anything more. I wouldn't say anything less. Looking at it, though, I wish I had a working copy of Game Boy Advance, Game Boy. I think I'd enjoy those, the handhelds. I think I would enjoy them immensely. I think I would enjoy the PS2 version a lot. Seems pretty different. So once you go down that rabbit hole, you're like, wow. Well, number one, the version I played is probably the inferior model. I think there's actually at least 2 to 3 versions that I would say are better than it. And that changes, right? How you feel about this game going out of it. I really think, well, it depends on the time you were born, when you were born, and when you played this game, is nostalgia and all that, how you feel about Harry Potter, of course, but also which version did you play? Because I think if you played the wrong version, if you played the PS1 version, and that's it, I think you don't know what everybody else got, and they got something quite different than that. So There you go. There's Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets, a wild but honestly pretty okay game, but a game that you can do better. You can do a lot better, and guess what? Hogwarts Legacy hopefully will be the best one when we look back at all these games. Hogwarts, if it's not an easy number one, that's kind of a problem, I would imagine. Let me know what you think in the comments. Make sure you guys are subscribed, bell icon turned on so you know when all these videos go live, and I hope to see you all on the next one.